Coming up on this edition, South Korean President Park Geun-hye and her Kazakh counterpart Nursultan Nazarbayev promise stronger economic ties in energy and power projects. The Federal Reserve continues to reduce its monthly bond buying program by another $10 billion and says the U.S. economy is rebounding. And as for the 2014 World Cup updates, Spain drops out while the Netherlands secures a spot in the next round.
Hello and welcome to Primetime News on this Thursday. I'm Sean Lim.
And I'm Kang Chae. Thanks for joining us tonight. President Park Geun-hye, currently on a state visit to Kazakhstan, and her counterpart there have agreed to take their economic ties up a notch by expanding joint projects beyond the Central Asian country's energy sector.
The Kazakh president also gave his backing to President Park's North Korea policies. Chae Yusun sends this report from Astana.
President Park Geun-hye and her Kazakh counterpart Nursultan Nazarbayev first checked up on 3 previously signed joint projects that are worth $10 billion. While agreeing to speed up the construction of a coal thermal plant and petrochemical complex, along with mining projects near the Caspian Sea, Seoul finalized a deal with Astana to purchase electricity worth $18 billion from the thermal plant for 20 years.
우리 두 정상은 상호 보완적인 경제 구조의 시너지를 실현시키기 위해 자원과 기술을 결합한 새로운 협력 방식을 창의적으로 발굴해 나가기로 하였습니다.
Beyond their energy ventures, the two leaders agreed to sign a rail technology sharing deal that could offer Korean firms the chance to participate in Kazakh railway and transportation infrastructure construction in the future. This in line with President Park's initiative to link energy and logistics infrastructure across Eurasia to transform the global economic system and assure security on the Korean peninsula. They also discussed working together in areas of medicine, forestry, and visa waivers.
The former resources-centered diplomacy between the two sides has now been expanded to energy and all other industries.
Kazakhstan, which voluntarily handed over some 1,000 former Soviet nuclear warheads in the 1990s, reiterated its position of not recognizing North Korea as a nuclear weapon state. It also endorsed President Park's trust-building policies with the North. Wrapping up her state visit to Kazakhstan, President Park will depart for the final leg of her Central Asia tour to Turkmenistan Friday, the first ever visit to the country by a Korean president. Chae Yusun, Arirang News, Astana.
Remember how economic democratization was the key phrase for President Park Geun-hye's presidential campaign back in 2012? Well, today, lawmakers used a plenary hearing as a chance to question whether her government was following up on this idea. Kim Young-gil tells us more.
President Park Geun-hye's top election pledge was achieving economic democratization, which calls for limiting the power of family-owned conglomerates and creating a level playing field for smaller firms. But ruling's Henry Party lawmaker Lee Han-sung asked whether the plan was working.
Isn't economic democratization only favoring the rich and the conglomerates?
One of the government's biggest goals is economic democratization. This policy is not lopsided, but rather fosters support for smaller businesses. The policy has been implemented to improve people's livelihoods.
Opposition party lawmakers were less reserved, calling the plan half-baked and claiming it offers no solutions to the economic problems people are facing. Ruling party lawmakers also asked cabinet members to push ahead with deregulation. They say it's necessary to stimulate the economy and prop up the slumping real estate market. However, lawmaker Hong Jong-hak of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy asked about the effect on household debt.
If we ease restrictions on home loans, what would happen to household debt?
Easing restrictions won't be a big problem, as the government can solve the household debt problem by raising individual incomes, allowing the debtor to prepay their debts.
The restrictions were put into place when household debt was rising at alarming levels. Amid differing views, lawmakers, however, did find some common ground on the need to put measures in place that would restrict retired government officials from gaining employment in the industry they used to regulate. They say such practices contribute to collusive ties between the private and public sectors. Jimyeong-gil, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve decided to taper its stimulus by another $10 billion and said the U.S. economy was rebounding. But the Fed slashed its outlook for economic growth this year. Connie Lee tells us more.
The U.S. Federal Reserve has given a positive outlook for the economy this year, even though the economic growth forecast was slashed. From a projection of 2.9% in March, growth has been cut to between 2.1 and 2.3%. This is the latest from the two-day meeting of the Federal Reserve's policymakers. At a press conference on Wednesday, Fed Chair Janet Yellen, however, expressed the U.S. economy is rebounding and said interest rates, currently near zero, could begin to rise sometime next year. If this happens, it'll be the first rate hike since 2006. The exact timing, though, apparently depends.
There is no mechanical formula whatsoever for what a considerable time means. The answer as to what it means is it depends. It depends on how the economy progresses.
And as widely expected, the Fed cut its monthly bond purchases by another $10 billion to $35 billion, which shows confidence of a recovering economy. The Fed, in the meantime, will keep a watch on economic stability.
Today, Yellen came out and said that volatility may be too low, and we agree. Bond market volatility is very low. The stock market volatility is very low. So any sudden spike or in volatility could cause interest rates to rise pretty sharply.
Growth projections for 2015 and 2016 have been maintained, and Fed officials do forecast a drop in unemployment. Connie Lee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, major investment banks have maintained their growth forecast for the Korean economy at an average of 3.8% this year. That is, despite the April ferry disaster. 8 leading institutions, including Goldman Sachs and Nomura, said they expect the Korean economy to continue on the path to recovery, driven by strong exports. However, they did point to lingering risks to the Korean economy's fundamentals, including growing household debt and the falling profitability of exporters due to the strong Korean won. Curry's comments came in response to
your gateway to the day's biggest stories in Korea and around the world. Breaking news, the hottest interviews, and a whole lot more. Join Arirang Sean Lim and Kang Chae-ri from the heart of Seoul.
Begins now.
Primetime News, weeknights, live at 10 on Arirang TV.
Those idle moments in the lives of time-strapped consumers are increasingly turning into mobile shopping excursions. And that's heating up competition in this sector that's making even online shopping by PC seem old-fashioned. Kim Ji-yeon reports on the unstoppable force of mobile retail.
Korean consumers are increasingly turning to their smartphones to go shopping. They shop in their spare time, during working hours, and on public transportation. Like 27-year-old Kim Geun-hye, who says she has been shopping through her smartphone 5 days a week for the past 6 months.
I use mobile shopping day and night when I'm in the subway going to and from work. Because I spend most of my day working, I don't have the time to go shopping in the traditional way. I buy the necessities, and these days I'm shopping for summer clothes. It's easy and takes less than 5 minutes to buy something.
And Kim is hardly alone. GS Shop, one of Korea's largest online shopping malls, says the number of transactions made on its mobile application surpassed the number of those made through personal computers for the first time ever last month. 11th Street says more than 30% of its total sales comes from mobile shopping, up 10 percentage points from last year. The changing landscape has companies scrambling to come up with new ways to attract customers. 11th Street debuted a service in May that provides data for smartphone users when they window shop on the mobile platform. GS Shop has introduced a customer service menu that makes it easier for users to get questions answered. Kim Jeong, Arirang News.
And speaking of mobile technology, smartphone users in Korea who already enjoy one of the fastest wireless networks in the world are in for another upgrade. SK Telecom, Korea's #1 telecom player, has announced an LTE advanced service with a speed of 225 megabits per second. That's 3 times faster than current LTE speeds, and that means a 1 gigabyte movie can be downloaded to a smartphone in just 37 seconds. Other mobile carriers in the nation say they'll follow SK's lead in the coming days. Samsung Electronics this week unveiled an upgraded model of its Galaxy S5 that is specifically optimized for the new LTE technology. LG and Pantech plan to do the same next month. The Korean wave may bring record numbers of tourists to the nation, but the government is hoping the nation can become a hub for the meetings, incentives, convention, and exhibition, or the MICE industry as well. Shin Se-min reports on a special expo dedicated to this goal.
For the second year running in 2013, Seoul was named the best international business meetings destination by the U.S. edition of Business Traveler magazine. However, that success has not spilled over to the rest of the nation. According to a recent report by the Hyundai Research Institute, Korea's overall competitiveness in the meetings, incentives, conventions, and exhibition, or MICE industry is quite low, ranking 18th out of 21 nations surveyed. It found that Korea as a whole was lacking in terms of transportation, accommodations, and marketing. To pump some new life into the sector, Korea opened the MICE Expo 2014 on Thursday with more than 350 domestic and foreign businesses participating. The event, hosted by the Korea Tourism Organization and the Culture Ministry, provides the environment for business deals.
Although we haven't seen a huge jump in sales yet, we are receiving more requests to hold events at our hotel. It's a big reason we continue to promote ourselves here at the expo and meet other potential business partners.
The MICE Expo, which runs through Friday in Ilsan, also aims to attract more tourists to Korea through other means, like promoting the popular Buddhist temple stay program. Medical tourism is also a big draw. In fact, a big portion of Korea's MICE industry belongs to medical tourism, which has been growing at an average rate of more than 37% annually in recent years.
And I'm interested to finding new partners, the DMC companies, the hotels, the venues, and medicine companies also. Of course, sometimes we have requests from Russian people to make a medicine inspection. That's why I'm trying to find something new.
The government has plans to host more events and conventions on Korean soil in the years to come. And by doing so, it hopes to add jobs and provide a much-needed boost to the domestic economy. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Tonight, we're taking an in-depth look at Korea's education system and potential changes due to the outcome of the June 4th local elections. And joining us for this conversation is Professor Emmanuel Pastreich from Kyung University. Thank you so much for your time today. Now, some say it's the public turning away from the conservatives and looking for changes, but some say it's the liberal candidates successfully unifying this time around. What are your thoughts?
Well, both are true. The liberal candidates, as seen themselves as underdogs, basically, were better organized and more systematic in their approach in terms of coming behind one candidate. At the same time, the recent Sewol ferry sinking has created a real desire for change among many people. In terms of the elections for governors or mayors, people tended to vote along their own interests, which could be liberal or conservative, depending on very specific situations. But there was a real sort of free-floating sort of angst, concern about education. So when it came to education, that tragedy, I think, was in the minds of many voters.
So in terms of this election, there was a swing a little bit towards the progressive camp for the superintendent. So what does that mean when there's going to be a slightly more liberal stance towards education? What kind of outcomes does that produce?
Well, I think the priorities there are several aspects. One would be to be more a priority on trying to shift everything back to the school, that schools would do everything to reduce the need for cram schools, Hagwon outside, and to try and increase pay for instructors, for teachers, and also there are, of course, various different issues about the content of textbooks. There's a more liberal issues in terms of history issues that might come up, and probably efforts to make a more what's imagined to be a more equal approach to education, to say that less privileged people would be entitled to better education at the expense, I think, of other students who are competing for top schools.
Well, but that would also mean further lack of continuity in Korean education policies and uncertainties, and that's going to turn off more parents and students, I think. What's your take?
Well, so it is always an issue, as you know. Students in Korea don't study until midnight because they like it, right? They're stuck within a system and they try and play by the rules, and I totally understand that. I think we can understand. And so for students who've taken one approach and then suddenly the rules of the game are changed in midstream, it can be extremely disruptive. So the real ultimate question beyond this particular election will be how to come up with a long, 5, 10, 20-year policy for education, and that's, I think, has been really lacking.
All right, Professor, thank you so much for your time and insight tonight.
Thank you.
It's official. Spain's new king, Felipe VI, has been sworn in as the country's head of state, ending his father's 39-year reign. And for more on this story, Paul E. is joining us from the News Center.
So, Paul, King Juan Carlos is best known for helping Spain transition into a democracy after the death of longtime dictator General Franco. But what's in store for his son now?
Well, King Felipe VI has his work cut out for him, as his father, as you just mentioned, has left a significant legacy in Spain's modern history. Felipe ascended to the throne at the stroke of midnight after Juan Carlos formally abdicated on Wednesday. It's the first royal transition in Spain since democracy was restored in the 1970s. The swearing-in ceremony at the royal palace was kept low-key, as many in Spain are suffering economic hardship. During his first royal address, the 46-year-old king promised to uphold the constitution and said he had great hope for the future of Spain. Felipe faces tough challenges ahead in order to restore the reputation of the monarchy, following a series of scandals at a time when many Spaniards are calling for the establishment of a republic. The Iraqi government has formally requested U.S. airstrikes to help stop the rapid advance of Islamic insurgents who have now seized the country's biggest oil refinery. But Washington is still weighing its options on how to deal with the worsening conflict in Iraq. Our Kwan So-wa reports.
U.S. President Barack Obama has been mulling over how to deal with the crisis as the rebels have taken control of more territory in recent days, as well as Iraq's main oil refinery. On Wednesday, he told top congressional leaders that he does not need permission from lawmakers for any action in Iraq.
The president's been watching what we've been watching for over a year as the situation in Iraq continued to be undermined. And yet nothing has happened to try to reverse it.
Also on Wednesday at a Senate hearing, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Martin Dempsey explained the difficulties of launching an attack from the air. The top general, who has extensive experience commanding Iraqi troops, also expressed doubts that the U.S. has enough intelligence right now on potential targets, considering how quickly things have escalated in Iraq. Earlier this week, the U.S. deployed an aircraft carrier and missile ships in the Persian Gulf, leaving open the possibility of manned air or drone strikes on the Sunni militants. Kwon So-wa, Arirang News.
And finally, the World Food Program has reportedly decided to scale back its nutrition program for babies and pregnant women in North Korea due to a lack of funding. That's according to a U.S. report by Radio Free Asia on Thursday. The UN Food Agency is currently operating a 2-year nutritional program worth $200 million in the North through 2015, which targets over 2 million children and expected mothers. That figure will reduce by 30% as the WFP continues to face budget constraints. Pyongyang has relied on international handouts since 1995 to help feed its people who suffer from chronic food shortages. And that wraps up our look at international stories making headlines around the world. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello and welcome to Primetime Sports. I'm Stephen Che. Now, there was quite a bit of action on Day 7 in Brazil. Of course, the shocker being Spain's elimination from the tournament. But before we get to that, let's start with Australia taking on the Netherlands. The Dutchmen were first on the board after Arjen Robben struck in the 20th minute, but a spectacular volley by Tim Cahill swung it to the Aussies, who eventually found themselves up 2-1 in the second half. Now to be outdone, the Robin Van Persie struck net to draw level, and a surprise long shot by Memphis Depay gave the match to the Netherlands 3-2, stopping Australia from advancing. Now on to the defending champion Spain, fighting to stay alive against Chile. Now, Chile put in 2 first-half goals by Eduardo Vargas and Charles Aranguiz, and that proved to be too much for the Spaniards, who failed to become the first back-to-back World Cup winners since Brazil did it back in 1962. Chile won 2-0, and with that, they and the Netherlands advanced to the knockout stage with one Group E match remaining. And finally, Cameroon faced off against Croatia, and from the get-go, the Croatians held firm. Ivica Olic scored in the 11th minute, then later in the second half, Ivan Perisic put one behind the keeper, followed by a pair of goals by Bayern striker Mario Mandzukic. Croatia won 4-0 to stay alive in Group A, and now faces Mexico next week to determine who'll advance to the next round. And with another high-scoring day in the books, the Brazil World Cup is well on its way to becoming the highest-scoring World Cup ever. And it may all be thanks to this right here, the bazooka, the official ball of the tournament. Kim Min-ji tells us more.
In Team Korea's first match at the Brazil World Cup against Russia, forward Lee Geun-ho connected on a long-range goal. The ball seemed to be in the grasp of the Russian goalkeeper, but bounced off his hands and found its way into the net. The bazooka, the official match ball of the 2014 World Cup, has been pointed to as a possible reason behind the Russian player's miscue. It has deeper and longer seams which contribute to its aerodynamics. Its unique surface also makes it less air-resistant. Therefore, offensive players will find it easier to roll the ball with greater speed and accuracy, while making it harder for goalkeepers to snare.
Simply put, it is like a volleyball. It will be hard to catch if the goalkeeper doesn't have a sensitive reaction to the ball.
To prepare for the bazooka, Team Korea used a smaller ball during training.
I was able to enhance my concentration by using a smaller ball during training sessions. As I have to dive for the ball faster, it requires more agility.
The bazooka has made the Brazil World Cup a high-scoring affair. There's been an average of 3 goals per match so far, a figure not seen in more than 40 years at a World Cup tournament. Faster and stronger, the bazooka may indeed be a deciding factor in future matches. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And with about 1.7 million followers on Twitter, it's not only faster and stronger, it's apparently also very popular. Well, that does it for Primetime Sports. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you later with more updates.
While those of us in Seoul enjoyed breezy conditions, it was a different story elsewhere.
And our Kim Bo-kyung joins us from the Weather Center. Bo-kyung, monsoon rains are on the way.
Yes, that's right, and they are moving up north, which should hit the southern regions by tomorrow morning. On Friday evening, that is, Jeju, Seoul, Gyeonggi-do, and both Chungcheong-do provinces should get about 5 to 10 millimeters of rain. In the meantime, we are seeing cloudy skies along with windy conditions along the eastern coastal regions. Shifting our focus to World Cup weather for a moment, it's a mixed forecast for Brazil. Sunny weather is forecast for Porto Alegre, whereas rainy and hot conditions will hit Rio. Back here in Korea, the monsoon should expand to more regions on Saturday, so an umbrella will come in handy. On to Friday's readings. Seoul hits 28 degrees, Daegu reaches 27, Busan remains relatively cool at 24. As for other places, Jeju makes it to 26, Bokdo and Mount Kumgang to 19. That'll do it for this hour, and join me for more updates after midnight.
And that does it for tonight's Primetime News. Thanks for watching.
We'll see you back here at the same time tomorrow. Good night.